Overpromised with Covino Rich. Do it.
Oh, any minute now, baseball's going to be starting, and I'm pumped up about that. I love that.
Aaron Judge is ready. Hey, are you ready for Overpromised? It's our bonus show. Let's go. We're Covino and Rich. We're on Fox Sports Radio Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 on the East, 2 to 4 on the West. This is the stuff we can't fit into the show, but it's going to be action-packed.
Action-packed,
We're going to
Pee-wee.
talk about name changes. You know Pee Wee Herman's name is P.W. Herman. A lot of people don't know that.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah, we're going to talk name changes because it's a very special anniversary. We're going to talk about the reasons you fell in love with sports. I have a little spin on something that went viral, but we're kicking it off with comebacks because there's two stories. There's a lot of boxing news this week. Dana White's getting involved with Turki Al-Sheikh. They're going to start their whole boxing league. But this Turki Al-Sheikh guy...
Every time you say Turki Al-Sheikh, I feel like it's something you get at Bennigan's.
Make you hungry? That was a Turkey O'Toole,
Is it
by
on
the way.
ciabatta bread?
Yeah.
With some nice honey mustard?
The Turkey O'Toole's on a sourdough pretzel roll with honey mustard. I worked at Bennigan's.
Can I tell you, I know that because even though you work there, I used to go to Bennigan's all the time, and I thought there was no better chain restaurant sandwich than the Turkey O'Toole.
It was so good. So a lot of boxing news. Turki Al-Sheikh also has that May 2nd card coming up.
Oh, you don't want to talk about sandwiches?
No. I'm talking fighting, right?
Oh, sorry.
When I say May 2nd, it's one of the biggest cards ever. You got Teofimo Lopez fighting, Barbosa, you got Devin Haney and Ramirez, you got Ryan Garcia.
He's allowed to fight again?
Yeah, Rolly Romero, right? You're only missing Gervonta Davis there. But as part of this fight, guess who's coming back?
Guess who's back?
Guy we've talked to many times, Jim Lampley.
And this, to me, makes so much sense. Take a listen to Jim.
Hello again, I'm Jim Lampley, and I'm here to announce that after a few years away from ringside, I will be returning on May 2 under the banner of the Ring Magazine to cover the triple header in Times Square that involves Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney, and Teofimo Lopez, a new groundbreaking event for the sport outside in the middle of New York City. I'll be back at ringside to call blow by blow. Couldn't be more excited about it.
Now, dude, he's been doing online stuff,
Yeah.
but hasn't done blow by blow since the golden era of the HBO fights, right? So he's coming back. And then guess who else is coming back today or is trying to come back? It was announced
Lamps.
that there he is, Jim Lampley. Very excited about
Back
that,
to
man.
you, Jim.
One of the best in the game. You know, we grew up watching Jim Lampley, helped us fall in love with the sport. But today, a former heavyweight champion said he wants to make a comeback to become the oldest heavyweight to ever do it, to ever win a title. He said he only wants to come back if he gets a title shot. He hasn't fought since 2017. That is Wladimir Klitschko.
Oh, Klitschko, the guy that was so good yet so boring. A lot of people say he ruined the heavyweight division.
It's true because he was so dominant and he refused to fight his brother.
Yeah.
I understand, but they held that heavyweight title so long, it made the heavyweight division boring. And if the heavyweights are boring, no one really cares about the middleweights and the lightweights, so on
They
and so
sort of
forth.
set the tone.
Right.
I look at it this way. I just looked it up. His last two fights, he lost to two legit guys. He lost to Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. So Klitschko went out in 2017. 2017 to 2025. That's 8 boxing years. That's like dog years. Like he might as well have been out of the ring for 50 years
That
now.
ring rust is
The ring
strong.
rust. I don't think there's any harm in it, but listen, he's not 57, 58-year-old Mike Tyson. But are you really going to get an almost 50-year-old Klitschko in the ring against a guy like an Usyk? Come
I
on.
mean, if there's interest there, if there's intrigue, it's a big name, an international name, might be a lot of money involved. It could happen, but I would not mess with the Usyks and Daniel Dubois of the world. These young dudes
doubt.
hit hard. He's getting older. But again, he's saying he wants to make a comeback. Foreman did it. He won it at the age of 45. Klitschko is 48. And it makes us think of some of our favorite comebacks.
Yeah, man, you know, the Tyson Jake Paul thing should just remind us all that sometimes the comeback you want, it's better off not happening. It's
Well,
just better off being left alone.
Couldn't leave well enough alone. Could you?
Now, if you want to start this list, there's a comeback that, I mean, the headline was comeback.
It's I'm back, I think.
I'm
right?
back.
I'm back. I think it was a simple I'm back. And we're talking Michael Jordan after he left for baseball.
Yeah.
There it is.
Number 45 was short-lived. People forget that first year back, he lost in the conference finals. He wore number 45, then he changed it to 23. And that's the comeback we like to think about. But based on my theory of he should have left well enough alone.
Sorry, is that your theory or hang tight? Because I think it's someone else's.
Okay. And we'll get to that first. But Michael Jordan, we like to ignore the Wizard era, and rightfully so. Why would we want to think about the guy that missed half the season, every season he played as a Wizard, and he put up like 20 points, but he was a shell of the man he once was.
Yeah, but we're talking about comebacks we enjoyed. I enjoyed when he left baseball and came back.
Not that shitty one.
Not that shitty one. And when you think of comebacks, it's not just in sports, right? Yeah. You also think entertainment, movies, music. You could chime in at Fox Sports Radio at Covino Rich. A comeback that wasn't that much of a comeback, but got so much hype and so much news was John Travolta's when he came back in Pulp Fiction. But he wasn't even gone that long looking back.
I know, in perspective, I know, not that long. But if you want to say, yeah, he did shit in the 80s. But Grease was 1978. Pulp Fiction was 1994. That was a 16-year gap of not acting, of relevance, because Grease was huge, Pulp Fiction was huge, and it put him in like a different light. He was dancing, Saturday Night Fever, and now all of a sudden he's...
Look Who's Talking and all that other stuff. Come on. The thing is, for whatever reason, it felt like he was gone and out of our minds forever when he came back. And he came back as like a bad guy. And you're like, wow, I didn't know that side of Travolta. The Royale with cheese. It was a huge comeback. So in the world of movies, it was definitely one of the biggest. Now in the world of sports, Rich... Back to sports, I know a lot of people think, when you're thinking like the New England area, maybe the Red Sox, the 2004 Sox, but as a Yankees fan, I say, screw that. Got to think of 28-3 Tom Brady in the Super Bowl.
Well, I'm going to think of both of those Boston area teams. I'm
thinking of the Patriots.
I mean, when you think about how that game was 28-3, there's no way you thought that Tom Brady and that team was coming back. Now,
Super Bowl 51 was a wrap. That's how we saw it.
We were at my house. Do you remember being in my apartment in Sherman Oaks?
Was that the one where you were crying?
I did shed a little. I shed.
It was, right? That was the one.
It was the year.
Now looking back, I understand why you were crying. That was amazing.
You guys made fun of me, but they had a picture back in the day where I was sitting like with my hands on my chin, looking at Tom Brady, and I'm like, because in that moment, I'm like,
it was amazing.
He really is the greatest.
It really was. You're like, unbelievable.
And you know, when you really think about Boston, for all those obnoxious, awesome Boston people we know, the fact that they had that New England comeback and the Red Sox comeback, two great stories. They own them both.
34-28 over the Falcons in overtime. Amazing moment. Screw the Red Sox moment, because honestly,
that was
Super Bowl moment trumps it. And for me, in the world of entertainment, I guess you would say my honorable mention, prisoner of the moment, because it's still fresh on my mind, has to be Billy Zabka.
Say honorable mention?
Couldn't leave well enough alone, could you?
Honorable mention? I say like number one. Billy Zabka made Cobra Kai an amazing show. I love Ralph Macchio. All the kids on that show are great. But without Billy Zabka, would Cobra Kai have had this success? And by the way, today, happy 79th birthday, Martin Kove.
Really?
From Karate Kid and, of course, Cobra Kai.
I like that.
Every time I call Covino Kove, he feels like he has to do that.
I feel like I have to do the Martin Kove where he holds his
gi.
He holds his gi like this. But you're so right. Not only the comeback of Johnny Lawrence, the character, where he was like misunderstood and now he's the hero, but the comeback of this guy's acting career, because he really showed his chops. Even though it was the cheesiest show, yet so great, he was amazing in the show. I think he deserves an award. I think Billy Zabka still has juice left in him. We haven't seen the best of this dude. I want to see where he spins off in his life and his acting career. So major comeback, props to him.
I wouldn't hate it if William Zabka, the poet, if Billy Zabka, by the way, that's a How I Met Your Mother reference. William Zabka, the poet, if Billy Zabka
leave my mother out of this,
won a Golden Globe or something for this role, I wouldn't hate it at all. And by the way, the gap of that was 86 to 2018, a 32-year gap between playing Johnny Lawrence. And I remember Rocky Balboa talked about it once, the gap between 1976, Rocky 1, and then playing that same character again in the Creed movies.
Are people still going to care? Is it going to translate?
No, but to try to reimagine that character 30, 40 years later is unbelievable. And speaking of How I Met Your Mother, Billy Zabka was on that show with this guy, Neil Patrick Harris. I always feel like you downplay child star Doogie Howser, dips away for over a decade, comes back as a womanizer, Barney Stinson on How I Met Your Mother. And the irony is that he's a gay man playing the biggest womanizer there is.
I just never looked at it as a comeback. I looked at it like he reinvented his character. He reinvented himself a little bit.
That's over a decade long. Like, all right, when am I going to get my next shot? He got it, and it was like, dude.
Hey, there's no right or wrong answers. You could chime in again at Covino and Rich, at Fox Sports Radio, hashtag Billy Zabka's the man. But again,
I love that guy.
Congrats again to Jim Lampley and props to Klitschko. I'd love to see you get. We all love a great comeback.
What about if Klitschko fought another, like if Tyson wanted to get back in there?
No, he said he's only coming back for a title shot. That's where we're at right now in the story.
How much money does the Sheik have?
Right, exactly. Right. And that brings us to, well, the reason why we're here in the first place. Again, we all grew up playing sports, watching sports. Rich and I worked for Bleacher Report, SNY, ESPN, now Fox Sports Radio, Overpromised.
We've been around the world, and
Yeah. And it makes you think, well, why did I fall in love with sports in the first place? I saw a video that made me think, all right? Some kid went semi-viral on TikTok, and take a listen to what he said. Hit it.
Watch your favorite sports team play. For me, it was David Ortiz. Being a Red Sox fan in the early 2010s in that era, getting to watch David Ortiz play every day was such an incredible thing to watch. When I saw him in the box, it was like I had to watch him. He was just one of those kind of players. And he was one of the reasons why I kept watching the team, because I loved watching him play. I loved watching him hit home runs. Think about the fact that David Ortiz might be the reason why I'm such a big sports fan today. It's kind of crazy. It's also for
And he posed the question of, what's the reason you fell in love with sports? Who was the reason? And my little spin on that is maybe it wasn't a person. Maybe it was a moment. Maybe it wasn't a person. He's saying David Ortiz was that guy for him. His question was, who was the reason? I'm saying, was there a moment or was there a person? Either way, I want to talk about it. I want you guys to think about it. Because if we're going to talk person, Rich, for me, as a little pumpkin pie haircutted kid growing up on the East Coast, if there is a person, aside from your parents who, introduced you, or your uncle who introduced you to a game you love, right?
Yeah.
It has to be Don Mattingly growing up on the East Coast. It has to be. That magical season where he hit 6 grand slams. I mean, just being, answering on behalf of me.
You said it has to be you made it seem like it had to be for everyone.
No.
Okay.
This is my answer.
Donnie
for me.
Baseball.
You could think whatever it is you think. It's going to be different for everybody. I'm posing the question. His MVP seasons, how he was the shining light on such a doo-doo team for so long. Donnie Baseball. It was a way he played. It was the way he wore his hat and the way he stood in the batter's box and wore his eye black. Everything about Don Mattingly to me represented baseball. Donnie Baseball, the hitman. And it made me fall in love with the Yankees, and I give him the credit. But if there was a moment, Rich, it was probably something Mike Tyson related in the world of boxing, because it brought family together for a big pay-per-view, big fun night. But I think that real moment for me was when Julio Cesar Chavez knocked out Meldrick Taylor with like 3 seconds left. Richard Steele's counting it down. I remember my family just erupting when that happened, and that really set me off for my love of boxing.
It's funny you would say boxing because I have my baseball and football answers, but what made me fall in love with sports, I remember watching Warner Wolf's plays of the week and his plays of the year and all that stuff. There's a fight in the 80s where Mike Tyson knocked out Trevor Berbick. And Berbick fell once, then he got up, fell again, got up, and then he fell through the ropes. And I remember being like, yo, Mike Tyson's a beast. And I remember loving boxing because Mike Tyson and that crazy knockout of Trevor Berbick.
Yeah, I mean, how could you forget it? Yeah, he kept trying to get up. Like a baby deer kept falling down. It was wild. So those moments are what helped you fall in love with sports. Was it a person, an athlete? Was it an athlete, a superstar? Or was it a moment is what I'm saying.
For me, being a kid of the 80s, I'm a Mets fan. I come from a Mets family. I wore number 16 for 2 reasons. The 2 people that inspired me most. We'll start with baseball. 84, 85, 86. Every kid wanted to get that high leg kick like Dwight Gooden. If you were pitching as a little leaguer in the 80s, you did that.
Owned the city in the 80s.
You did that big wind up, the big leg kick, and you wanted to be number 16. I still wear number 16 when I play softball because I loved Dr. K, Dwight Gooden. There were billboards. He made you want to emulate his wind up, his mechanics. The guy was fluid, striking everyone out. And then on the flip side,
these are the guys you were pretending to be when you were playing wiffle ball, when you were playing Little League.
So to me, Dwight Gooden was the guy.
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
coincidentally, number 16 was a guy my dad told me, Richie.
Oh, Richie.
This is the coolest dude on earth.
He is the coolest.
My dad convinced me that Joe Montana was the coolest dude on planet Earth.
And
I was 5 years old when Montana beat Marino in the Super Bowl. And I remember my dad being like, and that's why Joe Montana, son, is the greatest. And when I was a little boy, I remember that and being like, yo, Joe Montana is the greatest. And that's why I'm a 49ers
we all need
fan.
heroes, and I could see it. You still bring it up till this day.
It was very easy for me until this day to wear number 16 because my two childhood heroes, Joe Montana and Dwight Gooden, both wore number 16. And what's funny, I said this to Covino the other day, it's really awesome to get a front seat view of this with my kids and their friends, watching these little kids talk about Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge. Oh, my kids are like, Lindor, like they love Lindor. So watching your kids get all fired up about your childhood heroes and
it's
theirs.
a generational thing. It's going to be someone new for them, and if you're older than us, it's someone else, and that's what we're posing to you. We're asking you because that person deserves a lot of credit. Think of how much joy and entertainment you get from sports as an adult and as a kid. It's probably because of that person, that athlete, Don Mattingly for me, or that moment that happened that really changed your life. That team won or this knockout happened. But yeah,
there
has
is
that poster, the Hitman.
I said to Covino,
that's pre-mustache Mattingly.
The funny part about how times change, and depending where you are regionally, uniform numbers funny to me because if you were a kid in junior high or high school through the 90s, you couldn't get number 2 because every kid where I grew up on the East Coast, I want to be Jeter. I'm a Mets fan, but everyone on my team was like, I want to be Jeter. So high school, middle school, whatever it was, no one could ever get number 2 because it was like, yo, that's a fight.
Now, again, let's keep it clear, though. Jeter sustained my love of baseball, but who actually made me fall in love with baseball every day watching team? Don Mattingly.
But I was telling Covino how funny it is. I'm coaching T-ball for my son out here, Pony League Baseball, and on his T-ball team, I have one jersey that got left over. And it was number 2. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, in my generation, this would have been the first one to go. No kid wanted to be number 2. Meanwhile, 25 years ago in New York, there's not a kid that didn't want to be number 2.
You know where else you see that? When you're watching like the Little League World Series, because every answer, like, who's your favorite player? For years, it was like Derek Jeter, Derek Jeter. No matter where that team was from. Now it's Bryce Harper, Shohei Ohtani, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's awesome. So thank you guys for helping us fall in love with sports and taking us here. Now, again, I'm Covino. That is Rich. And today is a very special day. It's an anniversary. 1964?
Nudie Magazine Day? Oh, no.
Nudie Magazine Day.
1964. Today's the day that Cassius Clay said, I am no longer Cassius Clay. I am Muhammed Ali.
By the way,
Mama named him Clay, by the way. I'm going to call him
Clay. I love that, coming to America, but a cool name. Such a cool name, Cassius Clay. But became the great Muhammad Ali. And that photo spot is a famous one. And if you look between his legs in the color version, you see Larry Merchant in there somewhere in the background.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
There. But that makes us think of the greatest name changes in sports according to us.
Well, they always say there's 2 categories, right? The categories are religious purposes or ego purposes. And it's going to be one or the other. So you say Ali, religion, right? Number 2, Ron Artest, Meta World Peace. That's you could say like, oh, it's for the good of it. Nah, he wants attention.
Yeah, but he wanted to change up his reputation a little bit too, peace. Right? And escape that Ron Artest sort of attitude that he had. I automatically think of Chad Johnson too.
Who's Chad Johnson?
I'm sorry, Chad Ochocinco.
The guy loved his number so much, and he had such a love for his nickname, he became legally Chad Ochocinco.
Even though I was the original OG 85 in high school, they called me Ocho Cinco, dude. Yeah, they did. Union High School,
I don't
bro.
think it stuck.
No, seriously. No, but Chad Johnson definitely comes to mind. Legally changed his name, Ocho Cinco.
Now, another guy, religious purposes, NBA legend, and I believe you scammed a kid in your town out of his rookie card
True
because
story. Shh.
some little dunce in Union, New Jersey in the 80s didn't realize that Lou Alcindor was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Who else in there? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Again, yeah, some kid wanted like a Claudel Washington baseball card. And I was like, hey, I'll give it to you for the...
Yeah, who's that Lou Alcindor guy? Yeah,
You didn't know who that was. Because we know him as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Now, this is sort of a funny one because I remember one season he came back and I'm like, what's going on here? Mike Stanton was a pitcher for the Yankees. I always remember Mike Stanton out of the bullpen.
Good.
And then there was some slugger on the Marlins, Mike Stanton. I'm like, wait, what happened to Mike Stanton? Who's Giancarlo? Is that, you remember this or no?
Big G now. Big
G. Giancarlo entered the league as Mike Stanton. And then he went with Giancarlo.
Oh, that happens a lot in Hollywood, too. It's like, what's that famous story about Katy Perry? Wasn't she Kate Hudson? Her name is Kate Hudson, really.
Yeah.
But because there was another Kate Hudson, she's like, yeah, I guess I'll switch it up, go with the maiden name or whatever. But he was like, let's go with Giancarlo, now, which I love.
Now, this guy didn't change his name as much as just, this is one of those fun ego ones. Joe Theismann. I did not know this until later in life. I'll be honest. This is one of those, like, I didn't realize until maybe the last decade.
It's a great story. He wanted it to rhyme with Heisman.
So before he was in college, he was Joe Theismann.
Joe Theismann went
Joe
Theismann.
Theismann. And Joe Theismann became Joe Theismann because he wanted to win the Heisman.
And then there's just other stories, too. You remember growing up. You remember your baseball cards. You remember how guys went from like Jorge Bell to George Bell, right? There was like...
Of course, I remember, who's Rock Reigns?
He kind of was going by... I mean, it's just a nickname, but he was going by that for a minute, Tim Raines. So, some of the greatest name changes, and one that's not really catching on, Rich, your cousin, Gervonta Davis.
Yeah.
You know, he changed his name to Abdul Wahid, but no one's really rolling with it, so he's Gervonta.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what they're calling him after last week? Paulie Malignaggi calls him Stank Davis. So he's no longer Tank.
Oh, he's Stank Davis.
I don't know if Stank Davis, after that performance,
Stank.
after taking a knee, I don't know if Stank Davis will catch on, but that's what your cousin Gervonta's going by.
Can I tie it all together as we say farewell to everybody?
Sure.
Talking about name changes.
Yeah, on
sports.
this day, Cassius Clay,
What
man.
are your passions, Covino? Sports and music?
And butt cheeks.
And butt cheeks?
Yeah.
I'll tie two of them together. Wasn't Pearl Jam's original band name Mookie Blaylock?
Yes. Yeah, that was their original name. It's true.
And they decided to go with Pearl Jam, but think
Based
about
on
it.
the famous basketball player.
There you
Yeah.
go, Mookie Blaylock, Pearl Jam.
And yeah.
There you go.
Better known as Pearl Jam. There you have it. So you could add to famous name changes and chime in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Check us out, Covino and Rich on Fox Sports Radio. Hit us up at Covino and Rich.
Until next time, arrivederci, baby.
See you in the Overpromised land.
Later.
Let's go.
Goodbye.